on down the broken road. I call on you to help me carry the load. Oh Lord, you never let me down.
Thank you for joining us today. Anything you hear in this podcast is not to be taken for medical advice. This podcast is for information purposes only, and should you find something interesting in the information spoken about, please consult your physician further.
Hello, and welcome to the Broken Road Project. I'm your host, Trent Peterson. Today I'm joined by Necole McDaniel. She's a certified trauma registered nurse and also a certified emergency nurse. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, super excited to have her on today. She's also a partner and friend with the Broken Road Project, and we have started a stroke support group, a brain injury support group there at Texas Health, Harris Methodist in Stephenville. So I think I got through all of that decent. That was a mouthful. But we'll get to it, and if there's anything that I left out, you can add to it as we go.
Sounds good.
How are you doing today?
I'm good today.
Really appreciate you coming in. That's super awesome.
I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to have a good time, I think. We'll see. Maybe
hopefully.
Right? Okay. Well, for people that are knowing you, we're going to get to, there's a lot to talk about today, but for people, I want them to know you. Can you tell us a little bit of yourself outside of the hospital before we get to that part? Outside of nursing?
Yeah, outside of nursing, I'm a mother, Mimi, a wife. I'm an artist. I have a friend. And I just try to keep busy with what's, is important to me. And family is one of my top priorities. Also, I'm trying to learn how to advocate for people that have rare and chronic illness. And so that's something that's kind of in its infancy, but looking to raise more awareness about chronic illness and the types of rare diseases that are out there.
Right. Yeah. So you got a lot of things going on. You're a busy person there. Yes. When we first talked, you had mentioned that you were born to be a nurse. So what does that mean?
I think it's, I think when we're growing up, we always have ideas of what we want. And you ask a child when they're 6 or 7, what do they want to be? And they're like a firefighter or a police officer or a movie star. I always used to say I wanted to be a doctor. I always was very interested in healthcare. As I got older and I realized I had a very artistic side and could paint and could draw and won lots of prizes and contests and things at a very early age for some of my art, I started leaning more towards becoming an artist. I did get pregnant in high school and had my son when I was 17. And I had actually at that time scholarships to art schools, and one in Italy, one in London, one in Connecticut. I did not go because they did not have single parent housing, and I was not going to leave my child behind. He saved my life in a lot of ways. So I went into advertising and graphic design, hated it, realized that I would kill my liver probably in the first 5 years because there's a lot of liquid lunches with them clients, and decided that when my son went back to kindergarten, I was going to go back to nursing school because I thought, that'd be a good option. And I was a medic and worked in EMS at that time as well.
Okay.
And got into nursing school, loved it. It was hard, so very hard, but taking care of patients, doing clinicals, I was just like, yeah, this is definitely for me. This is my moment. And there's been patients across the years. I've been a nurse for 32 years. That's a long time. And there have been moments when it's just like, I knew without a doubt, this is what I should be doing. That I'd considered going to nursing school and then going to med school later once my child was older. But after nursing, and I started out in labor and delivery, NICU, OB, pediatrics, kind of that was the area I was in. There's been some really bad outcomes that I was part of. And it made me realize no, and those interactions with the families and the parent and the patients after that was no, this is what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. This is 100% what I'm supposed to do. And I've gotten more advanced in my degree, but my desire to go to medical school immediately evaporated. And it was just no, nursing is who I am. It's what I'm supposed to be. There's an aspect to it that just resonates with me, that making a difference at that fundamental level with a patient is just, I can't even explain how it makes me feel. And I can have the worst day ever, have like the worst shift ever. And all it takes is one patient appreciating me and knowing every day that I leave that I've impacted somebody's life, at least one person's, and having people say, thank you so much for being there, coming back to me later and being like, what you said was spot on. It just is part of who I am. And it's hard to put in words sometimes, but I cannot picture myself being anything but a nurse. And as sick as I've been, I fight to stay at the bedside. I may only do it one day a week, but I fight to stay at the bedside because I can't imagine not doing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. One of the questions I had was, after doing that and I had 30 plus years, but 32 years now that you clarified that, was what keeps you from burnout? I mean, burnout's a typical thing for caregivers and anybody in that
Yes.
field.
The wonderful thing about nursing is there are so many avenues and so many areas. And there are times you get burned out. There are times when you get in your soul gets tired with seeing some things, or you're in a situation where maybe your goals and values don't line up with administration's goals and values, or the unit's goals and values, or sometimes you just don't mesh with your coworkers, or you don't mesh with who your leaders are. And it happens to all of us. And that's the good thing about nursing is you can switch gears and you can be, this is too intense for me right now. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this job, and it's going to be a whole change of pace and it's a whole fresh perspective. Or I'm going to go off the bedside and do, a different type of nursing or soft nursing or, home care or, work at the school. There's so many avenues that you can take. And I've had a variety of jobs throughout my career because I've done everything from being a director to just being a staff nurse and everything that is in between.
Right.
And I have left the bedside. There's been a few times that I've left the bedside. Sometimes it's, because I was wanting to learn more and get more skills and work up the leadership chain, which I've done. And then there are times where I've had to leave the bedside due to health for a short period of time, still kept my toe in the door. That's kind of where I am right now. I've had to leave full-time nursing just because my body was telling me you can't do this 36 hours a week in the ER. But I still do 12 hours a week in the ER, and I will fight tooth and nail to hang on to those 12 hours. And actually, I'd be fine going back full-time if I needed to. I mean, my body wouldn't like it, but but I think burnout is real, and I think part of it is you have to be very self-aware that that's where you're going. It can sneak up on people, but when you get to a point to where you dread your shift, you dread going in, and it impacts you like days ahead of time, that you need to recognize that you're not being a benefit to yourself, but you're also not a benefit to your patients. That bleeds over into your care.
I would imagine so.
Because if you're negative and you hate what you do, it's going to come across to your patients that you're not happy with what you do. Your care is going to suffer. You're not going to be as compassionate. You're going to be as empathetic. And patients deserve us to be those things to them. And our job is not to make their experience worse. I work in an ER and I try to be very pleasant. Even if I'm having a bad day, I try to put that aside. And I've had patients you've been so nice. You've made this experience so easy for me. And I'm like, that's my job. Mm-hmm. You're already in a stressful situation. It's not our role to make it more stressful for you. Our role is to relieve some of that burden so that we can help you, guide you through this experience. But there's some nurses that don't recognize that and just keep on. And, and it's one of those things where you really need to be self-aware in nursing and realize if it's time to switch gears. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being like, this is too much for me right now. I'm going to go work in PACU, or I'm going to go work in OB, or I'm going to go, do IV therapy and meet people at home. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if it's a better experience for you and if it makes your quality of life better.
Yeah. And I've personally experienced a little bit of both of those, somebody that was on the edge of burnout compared to somebody that was right in the middle of it and very much enjoying what they did. And it affected my day every time.
Yes.
It wouldn't just affect that moment. It would actually stick with me for a while. So, when a nurse would come in that was either very exhausted or just tired of what she or he was doing, it stuck with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what you say is totally right.
And I think it makes patients in a lot of ways feel guilty. Like they feel guilty that they're imposing on your time.
Right.
I've had patients that, I've taken over and they're like, I'm really sorry I'm here. And I'm like, why are you apologizing? Did you need to come in? I mean, are you here because you're sick or you're injured or you're what? So why don't apologize to me that you need care? Right. Oh, well, the last time, the nurses made me feel like I shouldn't be here or I'm wasting your time. And that holds over on those patients. And, that's such a disservice to them.
It is. And I think that's when you kind of get to that point, and we've discussed it before, where you're not, and we're going to get to it here too, because I got some really good questions, I think, about that. But you stop being an advocate for yourself at some point too, because you're afraid of offending the medical staff. And really, that's not what that whole care is supposed to be about.
No, because nursing, like people, I see posts sometimes are like, why is a nurse coming in when she's sick? They should be staying home. Well, they don't understand the like the drive to be a nurse. And, a lot of places work short-staffed. It's kind of a chronic issue in nursing, no matter what facility you're at, no matter how good the facility is, there are issues with nurse availability and staffing across the board. There's budget constraints and, nurses at hospitals, staff to that red line as tight as they can. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of wiggle room. They are making moves where we're looking more at acuity of patients rather than volume of patients, which is a more appropriate thing, because you can have 5 patients and they can be all walkie-talkie easy patients, and that's a breeze. Or you can have 5 patients and they're all intubated, got catheters, have medicines every hour, have blood sugar checks, so their acuity plays a big role. Nurses, we call out, there's penalties for calling out too many times. You have like so many times you can call out and you start getting a performance improvement thing. And then if you don't get better from that, then, you couldn't get terminated for calling out too much. So I think a lot of people don't understand that, as nurses, we are driven, and there's a guilt component to it too. You call out, you're leaving your crew short because somebody may not be able to pick up, or you have, now where I work now, this has not ever been an issue, but in previous hospitals, you call out and they like grill you on the phone, like, well, what are your symptoms? Well, why can't you take this? Well, did you try that? And I mean, like, it's a real push of, you better be dead not to come in, and a lot of guilt and a lot of pressure. And, you kind of have some attitude issues when you come back the next day or 2 days later. And so it's not easy for nurses just to not call in. And a lot of us are very self-sacrificing in the name of others, because that's what a nurse is. We absolutely put patients first, we put our team first, and we put ourselves last. Mm-hmm. And so we would rather work sick than make our team have to work harder, or short-staffed people. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that's a whole culture issue with nursing.
Really is, which kind of is a good segue to the next conversation, which is the things you've battled through in your broken road, the things that you've had to struggle through and still maintain resilience and care for the people you're talking about, your team and the patients. And before we get into specifics on that, do you feel like being on the patient side is also giving you a different perspective?
100%. I think every nurse, I don't want anybody to get sick or injured, but I honestly think every nurse should spend a couple of days in a hospital situation, simply because it does give you that perspective. Night shift people, I've worked nights, we tend to, just do our thing, and we don't realize how loud we are. And how sound carries, or how trying to sleep, and you have something going on, you already feel bad, and you're trying to sleep, and they come in to do vital signs and they flick on the big light, or they leave the light on when they leave, or you need to go to the bathroom and you're not in a situation where you can get up by yourself because either you have an injury or you're hooked up to several things, or you coming off anesthesia and post-op surgical, and you're not steady enough to get up, and you hit that call light and having to wait and having to wait and having to wait. And there are some medications that make having to wait very difficult.
Been there.
And I mean, needing a blanket having to be completely dependent on somebody else to bring you anything when you're stuck in a room is very rough. Hearing them talk in the hallway and talk about themselves, their lives, their other patients. I'm a nurse. I know about HIPAA. We try to keep it down, but hearing discussions that we shouldn't be hearing in the hallway, having people that are apathetic to what's going on or treating you like, you're wasting their time and they've got better things to do. I've had experience where, meds that should have been given that were critical medications went the whole shift, even though I was calling and asking. There's been good experiences, there has been bad experience. Nurses coming in wearing 400 gallons of perfume for people that are scent sensitive or just don't like perfume, coming in and just reeking of fragrances. That's a huge thing that I never thought of that was a problem. Now, as somebody that's more scent sensitive, I notice it. Having your linens changed. There's so many things that you don't realize that are little tiny things to us as nurses that are huge things to patients.
Yeah, one thing you just mentioned, the linen change. Not in a million years would I have ever imagined how nice that was to have that done. And yes, that is a small thing, but for a patient, it's a really
for a patient,
it's just nice. It's kind of a freshen up. It's it's not fun laying in the same stuff for however long.
Having to request a shower, there's been times where I've had to have assistance, which when my husband's there, he's great. But just sometimes you need things wrapped up or bandaged up and you need a little help getting in there. And, I've come out and been very, very sick and came out of the shower and my linens were just stacked on the bed for me to do. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that we're doing. Sure, I can make my own bed. But it wasn't a good experience at all.
And I don't want to, for my side personally, I had great people, great care. So I don't want it to sound like I didn't get that.
No.
I really did get great care.
I've had amazing.
But I've also, being a peer mentor, going back and forth and being on the other end of that a little bit, it's a lot different being on the outside of that door than the inside of that door.
Yeah. And I've had some amazing nurses and some amazing care, 100%. And the good has definitely outweighed the bad over the course of the years. But there's been, there have been, and it makes me more aware. Every time it's happened, I come back more aware and be like, oh, you know what? Hey, let's move away from this door if we're going to be talking, because the patient is just now trying to rest. We just gave them some pain medicine. They're trying to rest. So let's move that conversation and joking around and let's move over here or, just kind of being more situationally aware. Yeah, and I think that, every nurse should experience that because it does. It humbles you in a lot of ways, but it makes you more aware and it can improve your nursing.
I would think so. Yeah. Just to compare on a completely different field, in construction, I always said that engineers should actually have to go out and work in the field, for so long and see that these numbers that you put on paper don't always match up to what happens in real life. Right. So I can see that being in this different and similar at the same time in the nursing field, that you learn a lot of things. I know nursing school is tough. I've had a couple friends that have gone through it, and it is grueling.
Yes.
Really, in some ways, it's just amazing the amount of work that you put into getting that degree. But there's certain things even doing the internships and all the things you do until you've been really in the middle of it, and especially on the patient side, I'm sure that's just a game changer in the way it looks. So I've got a couple questions also about what is a typical shift for a nurse? What would you say is a typical hours wise?
Well, typically we work 12 hours.
Right.
We're there usually, you have to be there a little bit early so you can get report. And it really just depends on your unit and your day. In the ER, it's anything goes at any point in time, which is what I love about the ER. I have ADD. I'm on the spectrum, so I'm neurodivergent. And so I need lots of things happening at the same time to keep me engaged and to keep my brain functioning the way it works. I've worked in ICU, but I'm not an ICU nurse simply because they're very much more meticulous, much more like that. And you're very isolated with one or two patients during the day. I like the variety. I like not ever knowing what's coming in. And so it really just depends. In the ER, you see a big mix of patients. We have, people that are there just to get a work note or for very minor things, all the way up to we're resuscitating somebody. And you see the whole spectrum. And that's one of the things I love about things too. We always, as nurses, you always get people who are like, well, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And we all have stories that we will never talk about. And we have stories that we may talk about just because they mean something on a different spectrum. And my answer is always man's inhumanity to man. Yeah. That's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life in multiple cases. And I've also seen things that just amaze me. And the spirit, the human spirit, what the human body can endure and recover from.
It's amazing.
Is fascinating to me because I have had patients that I have just basically held their toe to try to keep them from going down the drain the whole time. Just like, please don't die on me. And like, please make it to the next thing. And just have a feeling of like, this person, I don't see how they're going to make it. Like, it's just, these injuries are just so severe. This is such a negative, such a bad thing that's happened to them. And then they've survived it and they've come out on the other side of it. And some of them have had miraculous recoveries that just, you can't explain. And, some of it is, I've had a patient where I'm just like, you talk to them and you tell them like, some people need direction and you just don't give them the option of leaving you. And just like, you know what, you're going to fight this and you're not leaving me and you're not that. And those patients have pulled through and they've survived. And so sometimes it's just amazing to me what the human body can endure and still come out on the other side. And it's one of the things I love about nursing too, because, we see it at all stages. And there are some very heavy days. And the other thing that people don't understand about nursing is when I'm on the floor, I have 4 rooms, 4 patients typically. Now, sometimes we have more because you may get what we call a family plan where mom comes in and brings 2 or 3 kids that are all having the same symptoms. So sometimes you have more than that. Sometimes just due to staffing, you may have more patients. But if my patient codes, and it can be a pediatric code in a room, and we can work a SIDS baby and not get that back because typically you're not going to on a SIDS baby. Yeah. I have to leave that room, put a smile on my face and take care of those other 3 patients. Like nothing happened. Like we don't get time to grieve at that time. You get a moment, you can have a moment later, but there's business to do. There's patients to take care of. And I think there's a lot of people that don't really understand how hard that is to have to deal with something that's that devastating, have to deal with the patients, the family, the parents, all of those things. And then you still got to go out and take care of other people and maybe get yelled at or cussed at because they asked for a blanket 20 minutes ago and you've been tied up in this room. And so has most of the other staff or that are,
I think you kept that pretty PG.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some other stuff that just goes on and I can only imagine like,
oh yeah,
that quick switch that has to happen as a professional.
You just have to take a deep breath, put it away, realize you'll have to deal with it later and put your professional face on and keep going about your business because, we're not, you want to say things, you want to like really put that person in their place, but you can't because they're there needing care for whatever they're there for. And it's not their fault what happened in that room. Like they didn't contribute to what happened in that room. Okay. So even though we want to, call them out for their disrespect or for them needing something, you can't because at the same time, an emergency is an emergency to them. It can be something I've seen 1,000 times, but to that person, it's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep that in your mindset too, that, they may not intentionally, they may be intentionally not being a nice person because we see that too.
Right.
But they may not intentionally know that that's what happened in that room and that you were involved in that. And so they may just not be coming from that negative space either. And you have to recognize that. And then, there's a lot of violence in healthcare. There's a lot of violence in nursing. Our job is very high risk when it comes to having to deal with people because we deal with all walks of life, psych patients, people that have addiction issues, people that, have anger management issues, people that get so overwhelmed in what's happening, and it could be to a family member, not necessarily to themselves, and their frustration and not having an outlet for that. So there's, I've been assaulted multiple times in my 32 years. And used to be, it was, well, that's just part of the job.
Right.
Thankfully now that's not what they say. There's felonies now if you assault a healthcare worker. But at the same time, there is still that accountability with the hospital. What could you have done different? Well, I guess not walk in the room when the guy decided he wanted to try to choke me out. I don't, you can only de-escalate so much. And sometimes you just have to go into survival mode.
I think that's a good thing to kind of bring up and spotlight a little bit as far as the dangers that come with the profession that a lot of people don't realize. Even me, walking into an emergency room or an ICU floor or, typically any high level of care, there's usually either security, most likely a sheriff, or, there's somebody on staff. And it was very clear to me why they were there right off the bat. But I know a lot of people question that. Like, is there somebody special on this floor? Well, really, they're there for everybody, I would imagine, but for sure to protect the staff and make sure that somebody doesn't come up there super upset thinking that you did something wrong to their loved one, or, and looking, they heard your name, even though you may not have had anything to do with it. And they're looking specifically for you.
Oh, no.
They're looking for blood.
Oh, yeah. I've had them call when I worked at a different facility. I've had one call and asked to speak to the nurse that took care of them, which was me. They had some addiction issues. They did not get the medication that they wanted, that the doctor refused to order it. But instead of being angry at the doctor, they were angry at me because I was the one that had to be like, I'm sorry, I don't have an order for that. I can get the physician. And, they threatened me while I was there, which was fine. I mean, it happens, not fine, but it happens. I had plenty of people around, and then they called for a couple of days saying that they were going to wait for me in the parking lot and they were going to do all kinds of fun things. And it was honestly over a physician not ordering medications for somebody that had an addiction issue. But they didn't zero in on the physician. They zeroed in on the nurse because we have more face-to-face time with a patient than a physician does. We're the ones that are in the room. Which
leans back to that same thing you said before of just the things that humanity's capable of. You were talking about it on another level there, but at the same time, that's the same things going on in a different life.
And so, we had to make security aware. I had to get walked to my car. And, when I'd come in, I'd have to call and be like, okay, I'm here for my shift. And I'd have to wait in my car and security would have to walk me. And it was just, why would you fixate for that many days on me? You know what I mean? Like it was such an overreaction to me. But I mean, you have people like that. I've got funny stories of, naked people walking into the ER and people doing all kinds of odd things to themselves or to others, so it's an experience for sure. But you do have to, be situationally aware, be cognizant that people, there's people that will try to friend you on Facebook. I don't friend patients because there's been issues where some stalker-like behavior has occurred and, people trying to friends of yours. And so, now we don't wear our last names on our badges. You see, you had your whole name on your badge, but now, especially in the higher risk areas, it's just our first name, our preferred name, and our last initial, simply because, and, like in the ER, typically, like awards and stuff, they don't necessarily put the whole name of the nurse up there because it's too easy nowadays to find somebody. And, there's been stories of people being stalked by patients and other individuals. And so from a safety metric, and it's not something you would ever think you would have to do. But
no,
that happens.
I'm sure there's some scary stories we don't even want to go on.
No, that's okay.
I like that you kind of hit on a lot of stuff right there that has to do with what we originally discussed, which was the 12-hour minimum on a shift. And in the ER, that can go almost 24 hours. Who knows? You may be sleeping on a cot on the side and just for 10 minutes and right back at it, if you even get that much. Yeah. So, and I only know about that stuff through reading. I just read a lot. So, and had some conversations. But so that has been your life for 32 years. I know that you don't want to try not to spotlight your own personal struggles during that time.
Right.
But I do think it's important with that being the case, knowing you, and this helps, I think, really portray who you are, which I'm inspired by, is, can you walk us through kind of what that journey's been like on the medical side, what you're comfortable with sharing? Sure. You share what you're comfortable with, because I know there's a lot. And in a way, let's keep it, fairly short in a way that people can understand, because there's a lot there.
Yeah. So, I've always had like a few minor health issues, always been a little reactive to things. I did have a little breast cancer scare when I was in my 30s. Caught it insanely early. Basically had a lumpectomy and a sentinel node removed. The cancer was not in the sentinel node. So at that time we didn't do chemo. We just did surveillance. So I had to get like mammograms every 3 months and every 6 months. And then, all of that for years to make sure that it didn't go any further. So insanely lucky. And finding something wrong and having surgery, I think was a 2-week window. And then that had to do with me knowing my doctors.
Right.
Me knowing my doctors and my doctors advocating for me. And I missed a couple of days of work. And that's kind of my story. Is I usually don't tell people what's going on with me. I think I told my mom the day before I was having surgery, and I was like, hey, can you pick the kids up? Oh, wow. And she goes and watch it for me. And she goes, well, yeah, but why? And I was like, well, I have to have surgery. Why are you having surgery? Well, I have a lump and, it looks like it's cancerous. And she's just like, what? And that's kind of my history. I don't ever want to burden somebody with my issues. I'm very hyper independent. And that's sometimes good and sometimes bad. I will own that. And then moving through the years, we've, had minor health issues here or there. And then for about 3 years now, I started having hives, thought got bit by something, had like an anaphylactic reaction, took meds, searched the house, did some, exterminating stuff to try to make sure that whatever it was, we killed it. A month later, same thing happened again. 3 weeks later, same thing happened again. 2 weeks later, same thing happened again twice. And it just escalated to where I was having these anaphylactic events and this angioedema where my lips and my tongue, my throat would swell, and getting these hives. And then these hives went from just like your normal hives to the hives that felt like I was being stung by ants. And then they would leave these huge bruises all over me.
Oh, wow.
And then started having just like a cascade of issues with not being able to eat, just not having digestive issues, and took over a year to get diagnosed because of there's a lot of medical gaslighting, especially with women. Ended up losing 100 and something pounds over this time because I could not eat and couldn't get anybody to pay attention to that. And finally was having a lot of joint issues, a lot of pain. Having episodes where I'd get really, really dizzy and pass out. Like hot showers, I would pass out and fall. Stand up too soon, I would pass out. And so we just couldn't really figure out what was going on, and went through a lot of doctors and really a lot of research on my own till I was just like, you know what? I really think this is what I have. And that helped me kind of target the type of doctors I needed to see. Ended up being diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic condition that affects your collagen and your connective tissue, which your connective tissue is every part of your body. Mm-hmm. There's connective tissue in every aspect of your body. And some people that have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos or traditional Ehlers-Danlos, there's about 13 varieties, I think, of different ones that affect. Some people are just very targeted areas like vascular. EDS really just affects your vascular system. You may have some of the other ones, but it's really centralized there. And so was born with that, which, looking back now, I understand, yes, I did have this my whole life. I've always had issue with hyperextending my joints, being over flexible, having exercise intolerance. I was decent at sports, but I hated them because it made me feel so bad. Mm-hmm. Everybody else talks about getting a runner's high. I felt like I was dying the whole time. Right. And I felt like I was dying for a couple of days afterwards. I never understood why do people like exercising, because I didn't feel good. Being neurodivergent, having attention deficit issues, that's all part of it as well. Having PCOS and endometriosis, didn't realize that was part of it. All of those things were part of it. But what can also happen with people that have connective tissue disorders and collagen orders is you have mast cells in there. And your mast cells are your response system. So you have an allergen that you come in contact with, some type of invader, your mast cells are the ones that respond and like light up the troops and are like, hey, we've got an issue here. We've got to rescue. Well, they live in your connective tissue and they stay in your connective tissue and in your collagen areas. So if you have bad collagen, you have a higher risk of having overreactive mast cells, and you can get a disorder called mast cell activation syndrome, and I do have that.
Goodness.
And you can have one that's called mastocytosis that actually like lives in the bone marrow. That's a much more serious form of it. So far, we've tested negative for all of those things. I've had a bone marrow biopsy. I've had just any test imaginable. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket getting diagnosed. And so the mast cell activation syndrome causes you to have inappropriate anaphylactic reactions to anything and everything. Wow. At any point in time, I can have a severe anaphylactic reaction, and I may know what the trigger is. I may not know what the trigger is. Part of that has also led to what's called a gastric or autoimmune gastric dysmotility or gastroparesis, where basically my stomach does not work the way it's supposed to. And that was what was causing all the weight loss. I've had emptying tests where normal food sits in your stomach a couple of hours. Mine can stay over 24 hours and not move. Like it just stays there. And we did biopsies, and I have mast cells. A large portion of mast cells are centered in my GI tract. Most people only have 10 to 20 mast cells per high-powered field in their gastric area. I have over 120 per high-powered field. So 10 times basically what a normal person has. So if I'm flaring up with my mast cells anywhere, it can flare up in my GI tract as well.
That sounds not fun.
No. And because of that, I can get what is essentially the easiest way to explain it is abdominal anaphylaxis. I can have moments where I have what's called abdominal angioedema, where I'm not reacting anywhere else but my GI tract. And so everything shuts down. I get really bloated, extraordinarily painful, vomiting, diarrhea, the whole 9 yards. And it can be life-threatening because it can swell so much that it can cut off blood supply to those parts of your organs. So I have to treat it like a regular anaphylactic event where I take meds, plus I give myself Epi, use my EpiPen and all of those things, Benadryl and all of those things to try to get it to calm down. And so that has been ongoing since then. Because of that, like I said, I lost 120 pounds.
And this has been going on real quick.
Since February of 2023.
Okay.
Like we've had a huge life change since February of 2023. That's when it first started. And it took until the next year, honestly, over a year to get diagnosed, to get treated, to get going on. And so as a result of that, I have, this is my second, I have a port. And I'm on TPN. And so that's what keeps me nutritionally safe.
What is TPN?
TPN is called total parenteral nutrition. And so it is where I'm getting fluids, vitamins, amino acids, lipids, all the things I need to live through a line that goes basically in my heart. So I have a port right here that I access, and then it goes into the upper chamber of my heart. Right. And that is what provides me the nutrition and the fluids and things, because when everything is so swollen, I can't even get fluids in some days. Like, I try to drink 100 ounces of water. Some days I'm lucky if I get 20, simply because everything is so swollen. It's called vocal cord dysfunction as well. So there's times where I'll have what's called a laryngospasm, and it will feel like I'm choking because everything is just spasming right here. So I've had to learn techniques to try to get myself out of that. And then, the hives are awful.
Yeah.
They can be terrible. Anaphylaxis itself is not a fun experience when you can't breathe and your mouth is swelling and, or your face is swelling. I have some awful pictures. And that's really what helped me get diagnosed, was taking pictures, because I could tell doctors this was happening. But if I wasn't, it's always the way. You have something, you make an appointment. It may be 2 or 3 days or a month later before you see them. Well, I'm not having that, right, at 9:00 on a Tuesday when I get to have my appointment. So I started just documenting it.
So for a lot, it was almost an invisible illness.
Yes. And for a lot, it still is. I look healthy.
Yeah. You look great.
I look healthy, and that's part of it. Just because I look it doesn't mean I wasn't. And so that has made a huge life change for me. I've had to really learn. And with the joints issue with the EDS, my joints come out. I have subluxations and dislocations and ribs that slip. And so I woke up this morning and my left shoulder was out of socket and had to put it back in before I could get
too. I mean, those things for you, I know you're going day to day and you're not a person that's going to ask for sympathy over those type of things. It's just not your personality. But I want to make sure that's very clear that subluxations, things like that, the anaphylaxis, the flare-ups, all of those things are all very painful things.
Very, very painful. I mean, I live at like a 5-6 pain scale on a normal pain scale, which they have a chronic pain scale, which is a little bit more accurate, but most doctors have not adopted it. Monday when I went to the doctor, I was at 8-9 because my knee was subluxed just enough that it was swollen. It was horribly painful, but it wasn't so bad that I couldn't function with crutches, or I have like forearm crutches that I use. And, you know, like my ribs have broken. I would like have subluxed off my spine, or they've slipped. I was doing Pilates and I did a roll up and 3 of my ribs decided to slide off of where they were supposed to be. And one of them is hooked up underneath another rib and we cannot get that undone. And you know, it happened during the class, and it's so funny because she heard it. The instructor heard it. She goes, "Ooh, what was that?" And I was like, "Oh, that was ribs." And she goes, "Oh, do we need to stop? Do you need to go, doctor?" And I was like, "No, give me 5 minutes." And I finished the class because I'm going to push through. I paid for that. You know, I'm going to finish that class, by God. And so I've had moments where my husband's hugged me and he popped off 2 ribs and it broke one on the side. And it wasn't that he gave me a bear hug. It wasn't anything that was crazy, and he felt horrible.
I was about to say, poor guy.
Oh my gosh, he felt horrible.
That's like the worst thing.
Yeah.
You never want to hurt your person.
But it has happened. And I mean, like over time, I was always a clumsy kid. I always bumped into stuff, always fell down. I got bruises all the time. I have had probably over 20 fractures in my life, mostly from poor proprioception, not realizing where my body is in space and having an injury. And that all goes with having EDS. Like that's just part of it. Like people are prone to injuries like that. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just always a klutz. You know, that's what you get labeled as a kid.
Yeah. So I think that's why I wanted to start with the amount of work that you've put in over all these years. I realize this has elevated over the last couple of years, but it's something you've been dealing with the whole time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think it's an important part to paint a picture of the person that you are, you know, who Necole McDaniel is, and the resilience that you have and the ability to still have a heart, still care for others while you're struggling yourself in the background. And I think that as a society in general, we forget a lot of times that other people have lives too. So even though you may be smiling and we may be having a conversation, that doesn't mean that you didn't deal with something very traumatic that morning or even 5 minutes before I walked up to you.
Correct.
And I think that it's super important. It's part of my mission. It's something that I wasn't very aware of either. I wasn't very empathetic. I try to remind myself daily and by the minute that everybody else has things going on too.
So. Oh, 100%. 100%. And it helps me as well see that as well, because I know I present a stronger, I've got it all together facade because that's who I am, and I'm never going to be a burden on somebody. And it's also made me realize that looking at how people interact with me and their reactions and their behaviors, and keeping that thought in the back of my head that they probably didn't mean to come across that way. You know, who knows what's going on in their home, that kind of thing. Instead of being very reactive, taking a moment, stepping back and looking at things from different angles. And I try to do that a lot.
So something else we talked about when we visited previously was I deal with, not as much now, but I still deal with the fear of things happening again and going back through that process. Mm-hmm. So for you, you mentioned a couple of things when I asked you how you kind of deal with that, but what is your viewpoint on that as far as the relapses and knowing that that's a possibility? How do you do that day to day?
Well, I mean, I know that things will happen again. Mm-hmm. I also have a genetic mutation we found that makes me very high risk for leukemia. And so I have to see cardiac oncology and hematology oncology pretty regular to check my levels to make sure we're not going into what's called leukemogenesis, where I'm transitioning to leukemia. And so that hangs over your head, knowing I can have an anaphylactic reaction at any point in time at hangs over my head all the time. It's sort of like, the sword of Damocles. I'm walking around with a sword that's hung by a horsehair, and never knowing when it's going to drop. Mm-hmm. And I think that initially I was pretty fearful, and I think that's normal to be like very careful about where I go, what detergents, who I'm around, and then I just realized like I am not my disease. My identity is not these illnesses. I was fearful at first and it really impacted my life. I mean, like I was very nervous about being around people, about eating things. You can get very food aversion and you can develop an eating disorder from having what I have simply because of fear. And I didn't want to live. I don't want to miss the things that happen in my life. I don't want to be a spectator in my life. I want to be.
It goes across the board. It's really important.
Yeah.
What you're saying right now.
I should be my main character in the movie that is my life. Mm-hmm. I should not be a spectator. I should not be a walk-on, an extra, or anything like that. I want to live my life and have those experiences. And there is a risk, and I know it. And you have to decide what's an acceptable risk for you. But I could fall down these stairs that I had to walk up to the studio. Not that I'd plan it, but I could, and that could be the end of me. Mm-hmm. I could also, win $1 million today.
Right.
And that's a risk. And that would be a great one.
Yeah.
But there's so many unexpected things. So I don't want to live my life and miss out on interacting with my kids, my grandkids, seeing them grow, going to their events. I don't want to miss out going to dinner with my friends or my husband or, all of these things that we do because I'm afraid. I understand there's a risk, and I understand sometimes it can be traumatizing. I had an anaphylactic reaction in a restaurant recently in front of my grandkids and had to use my EpiPen. And, I wish I hadn't had to do it there because I don't like it being in public. And, my poor granddaughter was just like, "Are you okay, Mimi?" And I was like, "Mimi's fine. Look at Mimi. Mimi's not panicking. You don't panic. We're okay." And, it's just one of those things. I take precautions. I'm not reckless. I have multiple EpiPens and an emergency kit in my bag that's with me here today in the event that something triggers me. But I'm not gonna live in fear.
Right.
I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live it as loudly as I can. Mm-hmm. I'm going to enjoy things because I've had people like, I don't even know how you go out to eat. Well, I'm going to. I try to make the safest choices that I can. I pre-medicate the way I need to. I have backup situations ready for me, but I'm not going to miss, I've got a daughter that's engaged, just getting married. I'm not going to miss her wedding. I'm not going to miss being involved in that. If they decide to have kids, I'm not going to miss that. I've got 3 grandkids very close to me. I'm going to take care of them. Like my son and daughter-in-law had to go out of town for coaches camp and, I kept them. And I don't want to miss those opportunities because I'm afraid of having a reaction or having something happen.
I'm a firm believer that will contribute to your longevity as well, because as well that if you do live in that fear, or if you do just roll over and give up, your body's going to give up.
Yeah,
So
your mental health plays such a role with your physical health. And, there's been days where like I just have to stay in bed, just getting out of bed is a miracle. And I have to you just really rest and take it easy. And I've learned to accept those days. I hate those days, but I've learned to accept that that's part of what my body needs. I'm not great at listening, especially initially, to what my body needs. I'm used to pushing through. Mm-hmm. I've worked with pneumonia. I've worked injured. I've worked post-op. I've had surgeries and I've gone back to work in 2 weeks. When other people will take 6 weeks or 2 months off. So I've always been a bootstrap girl and just push through. And so I have had to learn to be kinder to myself in a lot of ways and to budget my time and those things, and really learn what's important. I've, cut a lot of people out of, my immediate circle because, they bring drama or they bring, just an unnecessary energy that's not conducive to what I want moving forward. I try to be more peaceful and happy. And I've learned that, my time is a luxury and not everybody can afford it. And that's okay.
It's a finite gift.
Yes. I only have much time on this earth. I only have so much time to do it, and I'm not going to waste it for unnecessary things that, don't serve a benefit. And that's caused some issues, but that's okay. That's their issue, not mine.
Oh, and like you said, you're the main character in your story.
Yeah. And so that's kind of just my philosophy, is just that, yes, bad things can happen. Yes, it could happen suddenly. But I would rather go out doing something I totally love, being around people I love, living, than holding up in my house and being afraid and being fearful and being sad and being depressed, because that's what would happen.
Right.
If I didn't have interactions with key people, if I didn't do things that made me happy, then yeah, it's just going to be a spiral and a cycle of, I feel miserable, so I can't go out. And I haven't gone out, so I feel more miserable. And then my symptoms get worse, and you just kind of go in that circle. And I don't want to do that. And I think that that's what it takes, is you have to set that as your mindset. Mm-hmm. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself for a moment. Mm-hmm. It's okay to feel that, to own it, to soak in it till your fingers get pruny. It's okay to do that. But just like soaking in a bathtub, that water gets cold eventually, and you need to get out.
Right.
And that's what you have to do. You physically have to get out of that and choose to get dressed and keep going. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, I think, is that everything you do is your choice. Like, I've had some really bad experiences in my life. I've had some really horrible things happen to me when I was not able to make a choice. But I don't live there.
Right.
I don't live there. I could, but I'd never get anything done. I'd never accomplish anything. I'd never have any quality in my life if I just lived in that moment.
That's valuable insight. I think that goes across the board on multiple levels.
Yeah.
No matter what you're dealing with in life, to have that.
Yeah. And you have to choose to move forward. You have to make that choice. Or, I told my dad got really sick because he didn't take care of his health for a while, and ended up having to have like some surgeries and a whole lot of other issues. And he was in that moment of just really in it, just really soaking in and feeling bad for himself. And rightly so. This was an independent man who's worked since he was a kid, who takes care of his family, and his identity is wrapped up. He's an active service guy. That's who he is. He's not an emotional, not a demonstrative person. He doesn't like hug us and tell us he loves us and all that. He's never been that kind of guy. His love shows up in acts of service, and he will give the shirt off his back for somebody. He's forever buying meals secretly for military and for police.
I love that.
People would come to our house. I remember when I was a kid, people that were having financial difficulty, which we were not wealthy. We were lower middle class. Like, I came from a very hardworking family. But they would come to my dad, and my dad would give them, money to buy food for their kids or for stuff like that, secretly on the down low, never asked for any attention, never brags about it. That instilled that in me. I do things.
So you come by it naturally.
I do things on the down low, and I don't expect attention for any of the things that I do. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, and it makes me feel good to be able to help people that way. So that's how my dad is. And so he is a very hard man. I was very strict. All my friends were afraid of him, but once you know him, he's got a great sense of humor, and, he loves deeply. I questioned whether or not he loved me growing up as a kid, because all kids do. I think when you have, we're too much alike, and so therefore we butted heads a lot. Right. I never questioned how much he loved my mother. Like, you could see it, and so I grew up in that. And he got sick, and this man worked 60 hours a week construction, and all of a sudden now he's not going to be able to, or may not be able to, because of all these health issues. And we were coming out of an appointment and knew he was going to have the quintuple bypass, and we're walking to the car, and he's, whining, bitching and moaning, to be quite honest. And like, well, I might as well get that life insurance for your mom, and blah, blah, blah. And all of this, and just all of this negative talk. And he had been like that for a week or so. And which again, he had a right to grieve. He had a right to be there. But I was to the point of like, okay, Dad, let's get in the car, and after we eat lunch, let's go to Home Depot, and we're going to get 2 shovels. Once we get those shovels, we're going to go to the cemetery. You pick out where you want. You start digging, I start digging. We get down 6 feet, lay down. I'm going to cover you up and we'll be done. And he immediately
get out of the cold water.
Yeah, no, he immediately was like, wow, I didn't mean blah, blah, blah. And he just like went off on this thing. I said, Dad, it's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to give up.
Right.
And this is a stumbling block. Doesn't mean you're not going to live. It just means things have to be different. He came through that surgery, went back to working construction in just a few months. Most people, that would have been the end of their career. He was older, or he would have needed a year off. Oh no, he was chomping at the bit to go back to work. He went back to work in a few months after that surgery, worked. And the fact that he worked with 8% kidney function for like 3 or 4 years before he had to quit and go on dialysis. Like that is a hard, put your one foot in front of the other kind of guy. And that's who I grew up with. And so that is what I know to be. And that's how I am. Like it's going to take a lot to make me stop.
Well, obviously.
It will take a lot to knock me down permanently. And that's just my mindset. And I think a lot of people think that there's an option to not get better. There's an option to not keep going. There's an option to stop living your life. There's not.
I think that's part of the reason why you and I get along so well. I'm a driven person as well.
You have to take the option away.
Yeah.
You have to look at it as there's no other option. There's no other option. I have to keep going. And I think if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, the first time I heard plateau was really frustrating for me. I'm like, what? Plateau?
Yeah. Yeah.
Plateau, I'm gonna beat that. I mean, are you saying that there is something where a place that stops, or it's just not? It's just
it's a plateau is a place to rest. Yeah, that's what a plateau is. A plateau is a place to rest.
I like that.
It's where your body takes a moment to recover, to adjust to this new normal. Right. But that doesn't mean what's beyond the plateau.
Revving up again.
What's beyond the plateau?
Yeah,
the mountain. It's still there to climb.
Oh yeah.
There's lots of plateaus on those mountains, but there's still a mountain to climb. Absolutely. And so that doesn't mean you stop. It just means you rest. And I think that people don't realize that healing is not a straight line. Yeah, it's not linear. It's up and down. It's side to side. Sometimes it's a circle and you have to go back and start over, but it's not a straight, there's not a straight line. And it's okay to get frustrated on your journey. We all do. I get frustrated. I get frustrated when, I have to have a shower chair. What? Right. That's for old people, which, yes, I'm old. I'm 55. We're old, but we don't talk about it.
That's right. That's right.
That's for like older, disabled people.
Now. That's one of my showers.
But if I don't want to pass out and risk a head injury,
that's right.
I better sit in that shower chair.
Absolutely.
I have forearm crutches. I have a handicap placard.
Right.
Do I use it all the time? No. When do I use it? When I'm having a really bad flare and I really need that time. And, I may not always look like I need it because I look put together, but trust me, if I'm parking there, it's because my body is telling me you've got so many steps today and you better maximize them. And
you just said something that was, that's another question I had. You said that you don't look like that. So that was part of our question, or our conversation before too, was about gaslighting. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes.
That happens more with women.
Yes.
On that end. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely.
What you went through, your experience, and share that with our audiences. They can also know that that's a possibility of what's going on in their treatment.
Yeah. Gaslighting is very real in healthcare, and it is unfortunate. Physicians, because they see the same things over and over again, a lot of times they get very locked in to what they think a treatment plan should be or a diagnosis can be. When you come in with something that is rare, and even though there's a lot of buzz on social media and, we see people that say they have EDS or say they have mast cell, and some of them do. I'm not saying they don't, but there's a push, and I don't understand it, where there's a subset of people that want, it seems like, to have these illnesses. You don't. You don't want this. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And so that takes away credibility for people that are actually suffering too, because there's every once in a while diseases blow up and people cling on to them for attention or for whatever. I don't really understand it myself. That's not to say that there aren't people that truly have symptoms going on, but not every symptom goes to that. There's a lot of other things out there, and, don't self-diagnose. I did a lot of research. I'm a healthcare worker. I know how to do the right kind of research. And I just knew the avenue that I needed to go down. I didn't know exactly what I had. I just needed to go down the avenue. But I went through diagnostic criteria. I went through peer-reviewed, studied documents. Like I didn't just, Google it. So when this first started, I'm a female. I'm over 50. Postmenopausal because I had a hysterectomy. And you go and I'm like, I'm having these hives. Guess what the first thing they said it was from?
Yeah.
Anxiety.
Really?
Really? I can tell you it's not. Anxiety can give you some hives, but are they going to give you angioedema? No, I don't think they will. And I was seeing a rheumatologist because I was having all of these joint issues and these joint pains. And again, it was, well, you're a nurse. You've been a nurse 30 years. It's wear and tear on your body. And I was like, I understand wear and tear on my body, but why do I feel like my joints are moving? Like, why am I waking up and I can feel like my hip is not fully seated or my shoulder is literally hanging down and I'm having to manipulate it back into
You're not making that up.
my socket. Yeah. Like, I'm like, this is not like, that is not normal wear and tear. Aches, stiffness, radiating nerve pain, because I do get sciatica. That's wear and tear on my body. And this was a female who, when I first went to her, bragged about how she loves her husband as a doctor because he really listens to women and he really dives into what they have and all of these kind of things. And I'm like, why aren't you like your husband? Right. Like, you're not diving into these things. And then I showed her the issues of the hives and I was like, but I'm having these episodes of hives and angioedema. And she saw the angioedema picture and she actually took that seriously. She goes, oh my gosh, that's angioedema. That's dangerous. I said, I know. I'm a nurse. That's why I'm here. Like, this is not normal. This is not wear and tear on my body from being a nurse for 30 years or anxiety because I'm over 50 and I'm a female. I can't do that to myself. Mm-hmm. And so she referred me to immunology and dermatology and, all of these other people. And I actually see the heads of the departments. Like, my doctors are like the top of the doctors. And, immunology, they initially tried to also gaslight me. I'm female. It's anxiety. It's probably something I'm using. And I'm like, this is not. So that's when I started documenting with pictures. And I would advise anybody that's experiencing any kind of illness, document what's happening. I would have a calendar. I would write hives from here to here or this to that. I would write all my symptoms down and the days that they occurred.
Across the board.
It could be across the board. It doesn't have to. Whatever your symptoms are. Whatever your symptoms are, document them on a calendar, have a time. Have what happened that day. Journal it.
You mentioned a binder as well.
Yeah, I have a binder that is about 6 inches. It is packed full. Wow. It's got all of my test results, all of my lab results, all my doctor visit notes, symptoms, medications, allergies, because that's a growing list. And I take it with them always because you'll get doctors that are like, oh, but they never tested you. I don't see where anybody tested you for X, Y, and Z. Oh, really? Here's the labs. Here's the results. And so it's a way to prove that you've done your due diligence.
Yeah. So real quick on that, just for people that are listening, this is not special to you because you are a nurse.
No.
And I want to make sure that people understand that when you're talking about putting a binder together of scans, of testing, of all these things, those are things that anybody should have availability to get themselves and put that binder together. Because a lot of people that I've talked with even recently, they're a little bit afraid to ask for those things. There's also times that they're getting diagnoses or getting diagnosed, but they're not getting to see their images or the things that just happened. That's all should be available, correct? Yeah.
So portals are the best thing that's happened with electronic healthcare, with the electronic medical record. I have access to all my portals. Mm-hmm. I print all of my labs. I print all of my doctor's notes, after visits notes. You can get them, the summary, what the doctor typed afterwards. You just have to go into your portal to get it. You can get your radiology reports. You can get them to burn a disc if you need them to. Like for certain things, I have discs for if I have an MRI, I need that disc to go to neurology or whatever. If you are struggling with a chronic condition, an unknown condition, something serious, make a binder. Organize it however you want. I actually do a spreadsheet of my labs. So that every time I get labs, I input them in because then I can trend it. And then the doctor can trend it and I can hand them and go, here's my labs for the past year.
Right.
Look at this number right here. It's just not concerning. And so it helps paint that picture better. And so I actually had somebody that was not a nurse that recommended me doing that. I had somebody that I was communicating with that was in the EDS community, and they were like, this has been a lifesaver and has gotten doctors to listen to me because doctors don't always talk. Everybody gets in their silos. But, and with immunology, we were treating what he was calling chronic urticaria, not looking into why. Why do I have chronic urticaria? That's not just something that populates. There's a cause. Like there's a reason for it. And we were chasing the EDS avenue because at that point I'd done enough research and done the bait and scale on myself and all of that kind of stuff. And I'd always kind of suspected that I might have it, but just never got diagnosed with it. And the dermatologist walked in to one appointment and he goes, oh, you have EDS, don't you? And I went, well, I've not been diagnosed with it, but I have a feeling. And he grabbed my hand and he was like, look at her veins, look at this, look at that. Because he had a student with him. He goes, oh, you absolutely have it. And so that is what led me to be like, okay, now I can do that. And I remember bringing up mast cell activation the first time to my immunologist who does not treat mast cell. And he told me that, reading things and watching things on social media are not true medical stuff. And I was like, did you forget I'm a nurse? Did you forget that I've got advanced degrees? And I went, since when are peer-reviewed journals articles, flippant and not valuable? And so I ended up I have to see two immunologists to treat my mast cell because I want to treat that and one that treats somebody else. And
basically having to advocate for yourself, which fortunately you did know.
Yes.
There are a lot of people that don't have that ability or even had any idea what to do. So I appreciate you.
You have to be your champion. And I often have taken friends or family with me to visits so that they could write things down because there's a lot of words that get thrown at you, which I'm better at being okay with that. But if you're not medical, I would strongly advise you to take somebody with you to your appointments that can write answers down. Write your questions out on a piece of paper and go through them. And if you're getting a roadblock and the doctor's dismissing you, ask them, well, what would the differential diagnosis be? What would somebody that has these symptoms, what are the possibilities? And that makes them have to stop and look through it. And, sometimes I've asked for tests and they've been, no, I don't feel like that's necessary. And I'll be like, well, why don't you think that's necessary? And sometimes I agree. And sometimes I don't agree. I said, well, then I would like for you to document in the chart that I requested this testing and why, and that you refused it and why. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, they're going to order the test.
I don't think that people realize they even have those abilities.
Yes.
And everyone does. Just, again, not to just keep beating on it, but just because you have you have the credentials, I'm saying that in a way that doesn't sound quite right. Yeah. But just because you are skilled in the way that you are, doesn't mean that somebody that is in layman's terms can't pursue that same avenue.
Absolutely.
There are certain ways that are going to get more things done. But I do think that, just recently there was a thing about a test that I wanted to have done. And I feel like what happened to me originally was from a lack of me being more advocating for myself a little bit more than I should have and kind of blowing things off. And because I wasn't that forceful about it, why would anybody else be? It's kind of like, okay, well, if you're not that worried about it, I'm not going to spend an extra time. But now I'm like, no, I don't care. If partially I'm able to at this point. If I have to pay for that, my insurance doesn't take care of it. I feel like that's probably something that would be where I haven't. I hope there's nothing there. But, let's just make sure.
Exactly. And so, we know our bodies better than physicians do. And yes, we can overthink things and make false self-diagnoses in some ways, like really obsess about something and read too much into things. And that does happen. And it's okay if everything turns out negative. I always want my tests to be negative.
Absolutely.
I always want them to be negative. I don't want to know I've got something awful. And so that was a big thing. And then, I started mentioning to them like, hey, I'm really losing weight. And they were like, oh, well, that's okay. You look really good. And so I was overweight at the time. I was, obviously if I've lost 120 pounds, we were on the heavy side, which I've struggled with weight my whole life. I come from long line of people that struggle with their weight. We're German stock, and, you know, we like to eat and we're good cooks. And that's just how, you know, we are. And food is a love language in our household and in our family, and in a lot of people's it is. You know, that's how you show. It's how you.
For 40 days,
yeah,
it was huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And me not being able to eat is a huge thing for my family. And I was like, you know, I kept going to the doctors, and a lot of my doctors are men, and not to say that's a bad thing, but men have their own opinions about the ideal, what a woman should look like. And so as I'm getting thinner, you know, and I'm bringing it up, but don't you feel better? Oh my gosh, don't you look so much? Look how good you look. Oh my gosh, you know, and just really complimentary on the fact that I'm losing like 20, 30 pounds a month. And I'm like, but
there's something.
But this is not healthy.
Right.
Like but I'm not losing it healthy. Like, I'm concerned about my nutrients. Like, I'm concerned about my nutrition. There's days I can't eat anything, and I'm barely getting fluids in. Like, this is not good. And I kept getting blown off and pushed aside and blown off. And I finally went to my regular GI, who I thought I was due for an appointment. I actually wasn't. And I was telling him all these concerns, and he literally was just like, big eye and mouth open. And he's like, I'm going to be honest with you. He said, I went into this form of GI so I didn't have to deal with people like you. Like, I want to do scopes and this and that and, you know, treat like common, but this is not something he goes, but I'm going to find you somebody. And I was like, okay, as long as you can find me somebody, because he agreed, because by that time I'm not looking like I wasn't looking well. I was very, you know, drawn. I had lots of bags under my eyes. I was very pale. My vital signs were very, very
changes.
Yeah. Like,
we went through that too.
Like, no energy. Like, I pushed myself to work. Like, this was before I switched roles to where I have a dual role. I was pushing myself to get 36 hours in, and then I was in bed the rest of the time. Like, I had no energy, could not function. Now, I'm great at masking. And that's a detriment in some ways to me, because I can fake it till I make it, and I can make you think that I look great and that I feel great, and then I'm dying inside, basically. And so a lot of people weren't as aware of how sick I really was. A lot of my family, I think, were not aware of really how truly sick I was, which is kind of my theme. For people, I've almost died a couple of times in my family. It's just like, what? We didn't know it was that bad. Of course you didn't. You're not going to know it's that bad. I'm not going to tell you. Which is not a good thing. Talk to your family. They need to know what's going on, but I'm terrible at that. I'm just going to own it. I'm terrible at it.
Well, we discussed it, you know, it's really tough when you don't let other people share their blessings with you. It's robbing them of something.
Yes. And so they referred me to, I was already in UT Southwest group. So they referred me to UT Southwest GI. They called and they were like, we can see you in January of 2026. And this was May of 2025, May of 2025. I said, no offense, but I'll be dead in January. Like, if we don't do something, I knew at that point I was dying.
Yeah, you knew your body well.
Yeah, I knew that we had to do something. And so I had done some research and had gotten into some groups on Facebook that were like mast cell related and EDS and all of that. And I was like, okay, who do we see? Like, who do we see that's not going to wait 100 years to get me in? And they recommended Dr. Samar Harris, who's a GI specialist, and she trained in the Mayo Clinic, and she was very familiar with EDS. And so I called her office, and I was just like, look, this is what's going on. I just kind of sent a message through the portal as well, explaining what was going on, and asked for an appointment. And didn't hear anything for a few days. And then I remembered I was at a family member's funeral. And it was in the after of the funeral, my phone rang, and it was their office. And so I stepped aside to answer it. She was no longer taking patients, but she wanted to see me. And I think that was just a thankful, just a right opportunity kind of moment, and had opened an appointment for me in 2 weeks. And that woman literally saved my life. I cannot thank her enough. She listened. She believed everything I told her. I walked into her office. She took one look at me and she goes, oh my God, you're in trouble. She goes, you're really sick and you are in trouble. I had like, because of malnutrition, I'd had like these splits that had come up on either side of my lip that were chronic. I had lost all of my hair had been falling out. I ended up having to shave my head, the most of my head. I was sick. I was really sick. And she was like, I need to do a couple of tests. And she said, and then we need to figure out what we're going to do. And I was like, whatever you want. I literally had a CT within a couple of days of seeing her. She'd rushed it so that I had to go to Dallas to do it, which was fine. She rushed that through. I had scheduled for an EGD, like within a couple of days of that. And within 2 weeks, she called me and she goes, you need to go to the hospital. She goes, I'm admitting you. We're going to put in a central line and we're going to start you on TPN because I am terrified that you are not going to survive if we don't get you to the hospital. This woman was calling me at night, 8, 9 o'clock at night, calling to check in to tell me like what we needed to do. That's the kind of doctor she was and is a phenomenal. And so I was like, she called me and I was like, well, do I got to go right now? Like, do I need to leave? Because this is like 8 o'clock at night. Do I need to leave right now and go to Presby? Because we had to go to Dallas from my house. And she goes, well, I need to call the hospitalist. I need to call these people, get things set up. And I said, can I have 2 days? And she goes, well, I mean, do you need 2 days? I said, I would love to have 2 days just so that I can close my office up, get some work done so I'm not leaving a whole mess of stuff for other people, and I can make sure my shifts are covered. And so she gave me 2 days. And my husband's sitting there in the chair giving me the death scare. Just go now. You know,
he was.
He's just like looking at me like, but he knows me.
Oh, yeah, he knows already.
I
It's
said,
like, what would be the point of saying anything?
And I go, if I get worse, I will call. And so we got it arranged. I drove in. I went to the hospital. Like, when I got there, the doctors and the nurse staff were just like, how were you even functioning? And then I told them, I was like, well, I was supposed to be here 2 days ago, but I need to close my office. And they're like, you work? Yeah, I work full time. I've been working full time. I don't have an option. I need insurance. I need money. My QT was like really wide on my EKG. My potassium, which is supposed to be around 4, and like 3 to 4, mine was like 1.8, which can cause like cardiac arrhythmia and death. And so the goal was I was actually supposed to go to the hospital. They were going to check me in through the ER. Then I was going to go to IR, get my line, and then we were going to start TPN that night. So that was the goal. My labs were so bad and I was so compromised that they couldn't do the procedure. I had to have, I think, 8 bags of fluid and I forget how much potassium just to get me stabilized so that I could have the line placed. And so it was like the next afternoon or so before I got the line. And then they were afraid of what's called refeeding syndrome, where if you give somebody that's been starved too long and you give them too many things all at once, you actually can shut their system down and it'll kill them. Happened a lot like in the war, like World War I, World War II, where people were starved.
Basically
and then the Americans would come in and they'd see these kids and they'd give them candy bars and they'd give them all of these things because the kids were starving and it was killing the people because it was too much at once. So we had to slow roll it. So I ended up being there over a week before they could get full TPN started. And, you know, they would say, like, you look like somebody that was held in a concentration camp. Like, do you not realize how bad, like how you're still alive, how you're still functioning is just unbelievable. And it goes back to that frog and water analogy. You know, if you try to boil a frog and you put him in a pot of boiling water, he's going to jump out. But if you put a frog in cool water and then just slowly over time raise the temperature, they'll stay there and cook themselves to death. Well, that's kind of what was happening. I was just so used to feeling bad that when I felt a little worse, I didn't pay any attention and I felt a little worse. And at the same time, I'm trying to get anybody to pay attention. Right. But because I looked good. And that's what the dietitian that she had me talk to before all of this, she was like, let me ask you something. How do you go to your appointments? And I went, what do you mean? Like, do I drive myself? Like, what are you asking? She goes, no, how do you go to your appointments? Like, how do you look when you go to your appointments? And I was like, like I always do. She goes, like you look right now on because we were doing a Skype one. And I was like, well, yeah. And she goes, your hair's nice. You've got really great clothes on. Your makeup looks impeccable. She goes, is this how you go to your appointments? And she goes, yeah. She goes, that's why they don't take you seriously. She goes, she says, you're not living your illness. Yeah. You're masking. And she says, and as long as you're masking, especially when it comes to male physicians, and they see that you look good and you're now fitting that more ideal image of what a attractive woman looks like, they're not taking it seriously. And she says, you need to
subconsciously, they're just bypassing.
They're just bypassing. Well, oh my gosh, she looks great. And when I go back and I look at my notes, healthy, nice appearing, like those were all of the notes on my description. And so it played, my pride delayed some of my diagnosis and impaired it in a lot of ways. And so I try to, not worry about, do I have bags under my eyes? Do I have this? Do I have that? I try to just like go and be a more true representation of myself. But it's just, I've masked for so long. It's really hard for me to do that.
Right.
And because I don't want to appear to be ill and I don't want to appear to be weak and I don't want to be a burden.
Well, I think that kind of leads to the next part. And honestly, as we move forward, I do consider you a friend and a partner with the things that we're doing now, which is super awesome. And that's what I'd like to talk about next is the support group that we're doing. But obviously, I'm going to have to learn how to read between the lines with you a little bit because you're probably not going to tell me whenever I need to take over a task. You're just going to keep pushing through it.
Right.
I don't want that ever to be between us. I'd be glad to help in any way I can. But we went up to Texas Health. I had tried to work with them multiple times since my stroke, and was hopeful, especially being right here in Stephenville, that I could do something. And I went that same story I told you, but went to volunteer services, tried a lot of different things, and kind of hit a couple walls. And it was strange. The whole way it happened was very quick. And that was, I don't even know if I've told the story. I'm not going to tell it again, but I went up there. I left a card at volunteer services and said, I'm looking for the stroke coordinator, and I mean, I hate to call anybody out and I'm not saying any names, but they didn't even know what a stroke coordinator was. Right. And I was like, well, look, you distribute this medicine and you do this, you have to have a coordinator on the staff. Okay, well, I'll try to. I said, if nothing else, just get this to somebody, and this is what I would like to do. And make sure they know I don't want any money, and I'm not asking for anything. I am offering the service. So, yeah, I don't even know. You probably know better than I, but it was a day or two. It was pretty quick.
It was pretty quick. They contacted the person that runs our cardiac rehab.
Okay.
And that's who they gave your information to. And she took it and emailed it and was like, hey, this came to me, but I really think this is more for you. This gentleman would like to talk to you about like a support group, which was really odd and funny on the timing, simply because about 2 weeks prior, I had one of the chaplains come in and was like, do we have a support group in this area? And I was like, not to my knowledge. There's one in Fort Worth. And she was, well, what would it take to get one? Because we really don't have a lot of support groups for anything in Ehlers County, and we don't. And I said, I really don't know. I've never run a support group. I don't know what it takes, what the last thing is. And so I had reached out to somebody that was running one at Fort Worth and was waiting for information. So the timing really was just, everything worked in the right timing.
Always say it's God's timing, but go ahead.
So I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I got your information. If you would like to talk, I'm very interested in what you have to say.
Hallie, such an exciting email when Amber and I got that. I told her, I said, I can't believe, that we're actually, and then that you were responsive enough to say, yeah, let's get together, let's have a meeting.
Yeah.
And that happened quickly as well. So Amber and I came up, visited with you, hit it off right off the bat. Just obviously you're a very inspiring person. And I think that our visions of community and the way that we can help people align very much. And just a servant's heart that you have aligned really well with Amber and I. And obviously it was meant to be, because I think you went back to the powers that be, or the people that help make those decisions with Texas Health and Ehlers Methodist. And
I had to submit a proposal. So we had our meeting and I took some notes, and then I went back and kind of summarized what we talked about, what we wanted to do. And by that time, I had the information from the one that was running the one in Fort Worth at the time. So I kind of could put together a formal proposal, send it to my boss, and then she thought it was a great idea, and we sent it to the powers that be, and they actually took it to our med exec committee. So there was several steps to see if they would say, okay, let's investigate this. Let's look at trying to do that. And so it took a couple of days or a week or so, which I'd text you or message you like, hey, didn't forget about you. This is a big organization. We got to go through channels before we got the green light. And then we got the green light. And it
Which happens really quick too.
Yeah.
It felt like I really expected after our first encounter that we would be maybe next year, the following year, we would actually, and we may even have to do some follow-ups and kind of do that. But obviously you were passionate enough about it too, to put in the work and steward that in a direction we needed to go for it to grow as quick as it did. And obviously it was meant to happen. And we have had 2 so far. The first one was that I led and kind of introduced the Broken Road Project. And the second one, you did a great presentation on blood pressures and different types of strokes and where those affect, which was just phenomenal. Great. I look forward to actually hearing that presentation again in the future because it was educational. I want more people to be able to see that. I don't think that even I understand and still got a lot to learn, but you were very good at educating that if your event happened in this part of the brain, it affects these particular processes. These are deficits that you may see. That's great information. I know doctors, and when you're going through that, and nurses try to explain that, and even therapists, but I don't know that anybody has done as well of a job as you did. So
well, thank you. Yeah.
You did great.
No, I do think that, education is important. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And I think that especially when it comes to brain injury or stroke, knowing what the potentials are, knowing where it's located helps set your expectations. Like what I said, it helps set your expectations. Like, okay, these are the things I'm definitely going to struggle with. And it helps you remove some of the fear. So now it's expected. It's not unknown. Nobody told me that I was going to have this issue.
Right.
And not knowing adds to people's fear and frustration and depression and all of those things, where to me, I'm very much like, anything can happen. And it can be the worst case scenario that could be happening, but just tell me. Tell me so that I can expect it. Tell me so that I can plan for it. Tell me so that I can make peace with it. And then let's move on and let's do the work. And I think that helps manage those expectations, helps set goals, because then we can see other people that have had similar things and, oh my gosh, look what they did this and we've gotten better. But I think when you're in the midst of it, one, you're not absorbing information. Your family's not absorbing information because your brain has been stuck and stopped at stroke
and it's
or
just a
cancer or heart attack or whatever. Like that's, your brain is still trying to process that. And while you're stuck in this mode, everybody else, yes. And the doctors are still talking.
Yeah.
Like they've given you this news and they're still talking and you are absorbing none of it. And a lot of times your family is not either. That's why, I always take a friend if I need somebody to be able to write notes, just in case I get into that situation myself, they can write things down, and keep up with that. And so that was why I wanted to do that. And also blood pressure is important. Hypertension is a big player in this, but knowing how to do it right. We get all these people that will come in and will be panicking because their blood pressure is one way or another. And then when you go to ask them, nobody told them or taught them how to do it right. And so let's erase all that anxiety. Let's that way we know, like, you're doing it correctly. Now we know we have a true image.
So you're extending your experience and the knowledge more into the continuum of care. So you're still right in the middle of it with your position, but you're also heading up and helping with this the support group that we're doing together, and taking that knowledge and experience and educating in the continuum of care, so that anything that was missed here, let's pick it up here. Let's share it more with the families. And
yes,
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah,
I think how important is community in that in situations as well.
And I think the support group's important because your family can love you, your friends can love you and really want to help you. But if they haven't lived it,
right,
they truly can't understand it. I can say I understand because theoretically, I do understand what happens with a stroke. Right. I do understand what happens with the deficits that you've had, but I've not had a stroke. So I truly can't understand how that has impacted you on a cellular level. Like I can theorize with it, like, oh yeah, that would be difficult. You know, you went from working construction and being this to now you can't do these things and you can't do those things and you had trouble speaking. I can sympathize with that. I can empathize. You know, I'm human. I can be like, yeah, that would suck and I would hate that for myself. No. But I can't understand your struggle because I don't understand what your identity is. Everybody has their core self.
Right.
And there's certain things that are very central to them. You know, I have a very dear friend that went through breast cancer, and her greatest fear was losing her hair. And she did the cold capping and all of those things, and she was able to manage it because that was part of her appearance, and her hair and things were very, very important to her and part of who she saw herself as. Me, on the other hand, my hair's falling out in chunks. I don't care. We shave it. We dyed it blue. We rocked a little rocker kind of look for a while, and I was totally fine with it. But me needing to ask somebody for help to do something,
that wasn't happening.
That is part of my identity, and that is part of my struggle. So it's very hard unless somebody has actually walked those paths. Right. Exactly. And so that's why I think the support group is very important, because you get people that have been more isolated and have loving family and caregivers that just don't understand. And it's the same thing for a caregiver. Like you went from, you know, one of the worst things that, you know, marriage is for sickness and in health. And me and my husband have had health issues on both sides where I've had to take care of him and he's had to take care of me in certain ways. Now his ability to take care of me is very limited because I'm very independent. It's not a good trait. I know, working on it. As a caregiver, especially when you're younger and you're, you know, I say younger because 40 is younger than me. But you've married a man and he's your partner and you've built this life together. You're raising these children together, and maybe he's the primary breadwinner or maybe you're both equal on that. And then in the blink of an eye, your husband is no longer the husband you married because now he's got a disability or he is, you know, has to struggle through things, and you have had to take over not just your role, but his role, and try to keep things going. And it can be the opposite. It could be a man having to do this for his wife.
That's right.
It could be either side. And in an instance that's changed, and you're so busy in survival mode that you don't have time to grieve it. You don't have time to acknowledge it. You don't have time to, it's just, let us get through this. Like, what do we need to do? And we're pushing, and you've got all of these things.
Care of yourself either.
Yeah, you don't take care of yourself because you've got to focus on them. You got to focus on trying to keep things normal for your kids, for your family. And that's why we want to include the caregivers and family members as well, because this didn't just happen. It didn't happen in a silo. It didn't just happen to one person.
No, it happens to the family.
It happens to the family. It happens to the friends. And, you know, friends and associates are great. And they're usually there for you in the crux, in the heat of it, in the moment of it. But they also have lives to lead. Right. And once you get out of that acute stage, one, you really learn who your friends are.
Oh, yes.
And two, even those friends have to keep moving on and are not as present. And maybe it's because it's awkward. Maybe they don't know how to communicate with you because now you have aphasia or you have some dysarthria and have trouble speaking, and they don't have the patience to sit there, or they're facing their own mortality. I can see it happening to me, and it makes me uncomfortable, so I don't want to be around it. And it's not that they're bad people, it's they're human. And we're all that way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I think those are very valid points and things that people deal with. I think the other thing that's really hard for people is that it is a lot easier to accept a diagnosis when you know that there's a chance of 100% recovery, or that there is a end result.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, and most, for sure in neurotrauma, but in all kinds of medical cases, there's not really a 100% this is better. You know, one of the things I always say is life is therapy in my world. And I don't really see that theirs is 100%, because for a lot of people, that's very hard because they want to see that miraculous recovery, and
they want it to have an end point. They want it to have an ending,
and there's no
and there's not an ending in a lot of things. And you know, medical fatigue and things like that are real, and it happens to people because, again, they get tired you know, it does happen to where they don't see you, they see your illness.
Right.
And that's part of what I fear and I worry about. And that's part of the reason I'm the way I am. I don't ever want to be a burden to anybody. I don't ever want people to, you know, be like, you know, all it is about her allergic reactions, or all it is about how bad she hurts, or all it is about this or that, or, you know, whatever. So I don't talk about it. And because of how I am wired, there's a lot of times it's okay that I don't talk about it, but there's a lot of times that it's, I wish I could. I wish I had a moment to just vent and to just be able to just talk about it and be honest about it. But you can tell when people don't want to hear it. Like, you see that shift when it comes up and they get uncomfortable or they kind of change the subject or whatever. And so I don't ever burden people with things. I've had really, really dark moments where I've had to tell my husband, like, I'm not in a good place. I'm struggling. I'm in a lot of pain, and I don't know that I can keep doing this because I was in such a dark place and I hurt so bad. And it was, I couldn't get away from it. Like, there wasn't anything I could do to get away from how bad my skin, I looked like I'd been burned because my skin was so bad head to toe. My joints were on fire. I couldn't get away from it. And it had been going on for days and for weeks. And we couldn't figure out how to make it stop. And my husband was great. He was like, do I need to take you somewhere? Do we need to go somewhere? And I was like, no, it's not. Again, I'm very self-aware. It's not that I want to end things. It's just that in a moment of desperation and just having one of those like really down moments, I didn't want to have something easily available to me.
Right.
And I told my doctors, I was very honest. Like, I was honest with the doctors and stuff like that. And I had one of my doctors was calling me every day and checking in, like, is it better? Let's try this. Let's do this. I'm going to call you tomorrow. You tell me what we're doing. And, like, you know, until I got over it. Once I got over it, we were fine. We were back at our baseline and we went back to normal. But those moments happen and it's okay. And at least, even though I'm very internal on my thoughts and my processes, and as bad as I hurt, and like I keep a lot of that internalized, I knew in that moment I needed to talk. I needed to speak up. I needed to say, I'm not okay. And I need you to help me stay okay. And my husband was fantastic. I mean, he drives me crazy, but he was checking in. He was making sure I was okay. Like, you know, there was not judgment there. It was, okay, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do to help you? Because
I think that's why community is important.
Yes.
It's like, we're talking about that we're doing a stroke and TBI support group. Support group for me I was phobic of that. You know, it's like, I'm not going to do that and talk about my feelings. You know,
right.
I talked about that, but it's important. And we are talking about how this can be a multiplying effect and hopefully create other groups in the future. And this will basically be a flagship for that and
yes,
a way to build other programs that'll be good for people, because I'm sure in your case, because there's so many things going on and there are some rare things in there, for you finding a group of people to talk about that is probably very difficult.
Yeah, there are some Facebook groups that I participate in, so that you have like somebody that knows what you're going, because that's what's important. And I think the other thing to keep in mind about our support group that we're doing is, this is not us sitting in a circle, holding hands, singing Kumbaya. This is us providing education and tools. Like, we want this to not just be, you have a moment to talk to people that are like-minded, but that you're getting some education, you're getting something that could help you. We're discussing struggles, and then we're trying to figure out, like, what can we present, you know, like adaptive cooking, like adaptive exercise, like, you know, all of those things. Like, we want to make this where we're providing education or some type of resource in the first part of it. And then the second part of it, it's more of the community conversation. You know, we want to be able to do breakout sessions for caregivers where they have a safe space to vent those feelings of frustration and anger and hopelessness, and have somebody sitting next to them that has walked it and has come out on the other side, that is just like, you're valid. Right. You're valid to feel those. It doesn't mean you don't love your partner or your family member. It means that you're human and you're processing your emotions, right, and that those things are normal. Because what happens is you get people that get shut in and isolated because it's becomes hard to get them out. You know, if you have ambulatory issues because you're paralyzed completely on one side, It's not easy to just run out and go meet your friends and hang out. It's a process. It's a process for me to leave the house. I mean, I have TPN. I have to unhook. I have to put it in a bag. I have to get everything reconnected. I have to make sure I have all my extra supplies. I can't just pick up my bag, my purse, and walk out the door anymore. It takes me a good 15, 20 minutes to get out the door because I have to plan. And it's the same thing for people that have suffered strokes or brain injury. If you're in a wheelchair, you can't just zip out the house. You've got to, there's a lot of processes to it. So people end up getting isolated because it's too hard to go, or they don't get invited to things because people think, oh, well, that'd be too hard for them. Well, maybe, but maybe it wouldn't. But the invitation matters. The invitation matters because it means you're still thinking about me and I'm still included in your group.
That's right. I may turn down 20 invitations, but it's pretty nice to have them.
It's nice to know that they offered it.
And to jump back on something else you were saying about the education in the groups, I believe, and I'm sure you'd agree, that education is empowering for the survivor and the caregivers and the family. So I do want to make sure that everybody understands that this is open to anybody that has interest. And you don't have to even really, because really the fact is everybody eventually is going to have somebody in their life that goes through a traumatic event. And the more you're educated, the more you're empowered to be able to help that person, be an advocate for them. And my hope is that we're going to build the people that come to the support group. We're going to empower them through education to be able to be that support for somebody else in a dark time and educate them in a way that they're maybe not able to do themselves at that point. So.
We talked about that. Me and my boss, Autumn, talked about that on the level of, 80 to 90% of what we talk about is transferable to every illness.
Absolutely.
Every illness. Yeah. And there's about 10% or so that is more directed towards stroke or brain injury. But, we want anybody to come and learn because, if you're older and you have hypertension, it would be good to know some of these things because you're higher risk for having a stroke. Doesn't mean you will, but my great grandmother died from a stroke. My grandmother died from a stroke. My mom has had a small stroke in her lifetime. Lots of people have strokes in their family. Lots of people have brain injuries. We live in Stephenville, Rodeo City. People have had car accidents. People have had rodeo accidents. People have had farming accidents.
Every day.
Things happen all the time. Right. And it can vary on the range. And so
this is good for employers for at just multiple different levels. Because the education and awareness is pretty low on that end, unfortunately. So hopefully we're going to raise that. And I really think that the more people are educated and aware that this is something that is going to continue to grow. It's something that is, I'm going to say epidemic could be the wrong word, but it's something we're going to have to deal with moving forward. The more you're educated and the more you understand, the less it is a fearful thing and is a more of an accepted thing. And then we can start pushing the limits of care, and the continuum of care can get stronger. The way that we build community and people understand people that have aphasia or dysarthria or any of these multitude. That's just two that are recent on my mind.
Yeah.
That people are very hard to understand for somebody that's never been around it. And those people are still there. There's still that, the person that they were before the brain injury or stroke. And that's what I really hope that people understand as we grow. And
that it didn't. Like stroke doesn't affect your soul, like your core identity.
Spirit's still intact.
Yes, it affects parts of you. It affects it can affect lots of parts of you, but you're still the same person. And people will talk down to stroke survivors, and sometimes you do need to talk slow, simply because processing may take a little bit longer. But it doesn't mean that they've necessarily lost all of their intelligence. Like some people, they have some devastating. Some people have had devastating injuries that are a miracle they survived and have, but not everybody. The majority of stroke patients still are there. They're still mentally intact. They're still cognitively intact. They just have issues processing, and people need to respect that. A lot of them, need dignity, and we take their dignity away. And the same thing happens with a lot of illnesses.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just like you said, it's not unique or specific to just brain and stroke. I mean, this is across the board for multiple illnesses. That's just a society thing in general. There was a lot of human connection that's gone now. So there are some ugly things that I hear and see. And
I'm very thankful I grew up without video evidence of my shenanigans being a teenager.
You're not kidding. But I hate that for that. And I'm not trying to go super negative on it. I just hope that we can create I hate to say that too, because it really sounds wrong, but it's true. A safer spot for people to be able to be open.
I think it's a place where people are seen.
Yes.
I think that is a huge issue with people is we are so caught up in the day-to-day and the mindless and our instant gratification and what we want to do is what we want to have, that we don't see people.
Right.
Like really see them. Yeah. And that's what we need is to create a space where these people are seen, feel seen, and are actually heard. Most people listen to respond. They don't listen to learn and take in information. And I think we need to change that mindset.
I think that's a good place to let it sit. I mean, we could sit here.
Oh, we could talk all day.
I know. We get off camera, but that's a good place to let it sit. I sure appreciate you coming in today and being vulnerable and telling your part of the story. There's a lot of stuff there. And I think it's a testament to who you are as a person and the strength and resilience in who you are.
Yeah.
And that others can do that too, because you've even mentioned to me, you're like, I look and think somebody else has it so much worse than I. Mm-hmm. And there's something to that. It's amazing. You know?
Yeah. I think you have to make sure that, like I said, you don't get so wrapped up in your illness that it becomes your identity and you lose that core part of yourself and that core drive to be better, to have better, to want, that's important to me. Like, I have an illness. I have a couple of them and they're pretty rare and they're pretty serious.
Yeah.
But I'm still Nikki. I'm still a mom. I'm still a Mimi. I'm still a wife. I'm still an artist. I'm still a friend. I'm still a nurse. That's who I am. That just happened to me. But this is who I am. And so I want to hang on to that. Like, I don't want people remembering me being sick and whiny and they had to avoid me because I just dwelled in the misery and brought other people with me. I want people to remember those things, that's who I am and the fun that we had and how hard-headed I am, make jokes about it's fun, and the crazy things I would do or say or, my spirit, my personality. That's what I want people to remember for me. Mm-hmm. Not that I was sick.
Amen to that.
And, I think most people need to think about that. How do you want to be remembered?
Absolutely. That's a good place to drop it. Mic drop. Bam. Yeah, that is so great. Thank you so much for coming in
thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Thanks for joining us.
I'll do my best one day at a time on the broken road, on a broken road.